Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to today's in session focused on capturing the right content and how to use it to book more shows. I am Kristen, aka Like Water, and I'm super excited to be joined by some amazing panelists. We've got Ashley, Jane, Emmy, and Mike. Let's start with you, Emmy. Just share a little bit about who you are and your preferred gender pronouns.
Hello, and thank you very much for inviting me to this show. I'm really honored. I'm a videographer and an editor, and at the moment studying to be a film director in university, actually in full-time university, which is quite funny in my age. And I'm located in Budapest, Hungary, mid-Europe.
Awesome. Love it. And no, you're never, and no age matters. It's awesome. Jane, can you share a bit about who you are and your preferred gender pronouns?
Hi everyone, my name is Jane Jimenez. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Thank you so much for making me part of this panel today. I've been taking photos for a very long time, and not necessarily music, but I started taking photos for So Far Sounds almost 6 years ago now, which seems amazingly long. And yeah, and I dabble in a lot of live music photography. My specialty is more in low light photography. And yeah, that's me.
I love it. Yes, gotta love that moodiness and being able to capture those moments in that way. Super excited. And yes, you're absolutely a rock star. Ashley, can you share a bit about who you are and your preferred gender pronouns as well?
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley. My pronouns are she, her. Thanks for having me today. I have been working in production and music for about 10 years as a engineer and content creator and podcast producer and just kind of all things mostly audio. And yeah, I'm based in Washington, D.C.
Love it. Awesome. So much love, Ashley. And Mike, can you share a bit about who you are and your preferred gender pronouns?
Pronouns are he, him. I've worked in the entertainment industry about 13 years. I worked for Warner Electro Atlantic. I did A&R for a couple of smaller labels, but most of my time has been as a concert promoter and talent buyer. I worked for Live Nation for about 10 years, and the last 3 years were spent booking for City Winery up here in Boston.
Awesome. Love it. Super excited to have you, Mike. Awesome. So, in case you guys just aren't already pumped, this is an incredible powerhouse panel for sure. And before we dive into all the questions that we have prepared, we're going to spend that first 45 minutes jumping into really some juicy nuggets going on, sharing some information with you all. And the last 15 minutes will be spent answering any questions that you all have. So, if you have any questions, we'll answer that in the last 15 minutes of the webinar. So, before we jump into everything, a few housekeeping items. First, this is a supportive and uplifting space, so we want to keep that in mind as we get into the discussion and in the chat. Also, when using the chat function, please let us know where you're tuning in from, what you're excited to hear about. But make sure that little blue bar in your chat is set to everyone so that we can all be a part of the conversation and we'll be good to go. Also, like I said before, that last 15 minutes, we're going to be answering any questions that you have. So there's a Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So be sure to drop your questions there so it doesn't get lost in the chat as we are, just having fun in there. And at the end, you will receive a survey just to let us know how you felt about today's webinar and if you have any other topics that you'd like for us to discuss and share in a future in session. So yeah, hopefully you guys get that done and get that in so we can get some things rolling for you all. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it with a heavy hitting question to start it all off. And I'm going to pose this question to you, Mike. What type of content are talent buyers looking for?
Well, I think what comes first is always the music. The sound has to be, on point and making sure that it's something that is digestible to the public. In terms of videos, we want to make sure that there's something creative, that's something engaging. If there's an artist ever approached me about doing a show and they shot me videos, I always wanted to make sure I got a look at what the crowd was doing. Like, is the crowd engaged? Are they singing your songs? Are they over at the bar not paying attention to what you're doing? Like, we want to make sure that these people are excited about whatever they're seeing, because if they're excited, then means they're gonna come to the show, which means that, you know, that's a profitable night for whatever venue you're gonna be working in.
Awesome. I love that. And that makes total sense. And I don't know if it's something that, you automatically think about, especially when, figuring out how you're gonna put together some content. You're like, I'm just gonna capture anything. I'm gonna capture something that presents myself, but you don't think about the fact that, I mean, people want to know that people like what you're doing. So the
I
crowd
mean,
wants to be engaged.
it's a simple thing you got to think about, but you know, as much as you don't want to, people don't like to think about it, and obviously music is something we're all passionate about, but it is also a business and an industry. So they want to make sure that people are coming into your venue and making sure that, you know, everything from they're buying tickets to they're buying drinks or buying food or whatever it is. They want to make sure that all aspects are, you know, going upwards.
Love that, absolutely. So with that in mind and knowing like kind of what the lens talent buyers are looking through, Ashley, can you tell us just a bit about what artists should ask for when they're confirming venues to make sure that you're able to capture the best audio from their live show?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first step is just asking, can you record my audio and can you multi-track? Some venues can only just like give you the two track of the live mix. And I think the biggest key for post-production is making sure that you're getting all of the individual stems. Some venues can't do it and they tell you to bring your own engineer and what their setup is. And some venues can and they might charge a different fee for that. But I think the first step is always asking, how does this work at your particular venue so that you can prepare in advance. I
Awesome. I
also
love that.
recommend asking them to add audience mics so that
Hmm.
when you're mixing for video and you're trying to do something, like Mike said, it's really important to show your audience having a good time. And if you're doing like call and response or something like that, if you can't hear them, it kind of takes away from it. So audience mics is a thing too. You should sneak in there.
Absolutely. You're like, everybody say hey, and it's like crickets.
Right, right,
But
right.
they're like all for it. Absolutely. Love that. Amy, how about you? How can artists, what should they ask for when they're confirming with the venue to help in you capturing video?
Well, if it's come to videographers, I think it's very important the videographer can go and have a look before, like the previous days, because every single job, every single venue needs different equipment. So we need to get the right equipment, the right lenses, and we need to see what's the light situation. Do we need to bring more lights or not? We also have to talk to the audio people because the two things are working very much together. We have to talk to the owner of the runners of the venue. What are the possibilities? What's possible, what's not. Maybe we would like to move things, maybe we would like to change the background and so on. And yes, I can add to that too, that the audience is very important and they supposed to enjoy the show, and showing people eating is not very nice. So well, I learned it from a wedding videographer, so just never show people eating.
Love that. Gotta show people engaged. Absolutely. I love that. And getting into the venue ahead of time is huge and something that I don't think you think about either, or at least I hadn't.
It's very important because even me, I mean, I cannot, I mean, yes, I will bring all my stuff, but I will think before that. So the days before we go to record something like this, I'm going to think how I'm going to do it. I'm thinking about where to put the camera, where to put the lights, how to do all these things. And we talk with the photographer and the audio people, how are we going to do this so we don't block each other's work. So we give each other way to work properly. So the
Love
whole
that.
crew is supposed to meet before that, actually. That would be
To make
nice.
it cohesive and efficient. And yes, this is like music to my ears.
Yeah, I mean, respect each other's work. I mean, these are all professions, you know, and everybody's trying to do their best for a good outcome.
Absolutely. And Jane, how about for you for photography? What should the artists kind of confirm and set up ahead of time?
Yeah, very similar to Emmy. But doesn't have to be like the day before, can just like have a nice recce of the venue on the day. I think the main one for me, and I always stress about this, and it's never been a problem, but I always think on the day that my name's not going to be on the list. So I always turn up just like, oh, it's not going to be on the list, but then it is. I'm always surprised by it. I've been having for years. I don't know why that is, but just make sure your photographer's name's on the list. Make sure your photographer has the right photo pass. There has been a time in the past where I would have an access all areas pass, and the other photographers will have like just the concert pit pass, and the security guards don't understand the difference. So when you're after the 3 songs, because most photographers are only allowed to take photos in the first 3 songs, which is time sensitive and stressful, but it's part of why we love what we do. And yeah, and if I'm there on the 4th song and the security's like, why are you here kicking me out? That's stressful on the photographer. So just to make sure that the security is talking to the photographers and the passes are all like correct.
Awesome. I love that. And I can't even imagine how, yeah, you just said exactly how stressful it is. So I'm so glad that we're having this and able to kind of give artists a view into the lives that you all live, and the other side of the stage that is able to kind of capture this. And hopefully after this webinar, you know, some artists will see it and make your lives easier, i.e. me as well. So this is great. Awesome. So now we have like what artists need to have ahead of time. As far as creative direction is concerned, how much information should the artist share with you up front as to like what their vision is, and how much of it is kind of you all seeing what the magic is in the room at the time? And anybody can start with this, anybody who's passionate about this.
I can start if you want. I prefer when people are showing me something which is alike, because it's even among us professionals, sometimes it's difficult to talk about these things because language is sometimes is not good enough to describe the feelings, what they would like to have. And it's possible that we can talk about it, but it's much better if they show something alike, or show me 3 something alike, you know, so then I don't stuck to that thing, but I get a sense of what kind of thing they would like. And there's tons of examples out there in the world. So this is why I'm telling to all my clients, not only in music videos, but in other clients as well, that when they would like to have something, when you say that I would like a video, this is brilliant, you know. So so there's a countless options, you know, and there's a countless styles and the countless budget. And so can we just like minimize a little bit the thing of what kind of sensation, what kind of feeling you would like to get in the end, and then I can catch the thing, and then I can bring them even more examples, or then we can even talk. I mean, talk is good enough from here now to say that maybe we could do it a bit of softer, you know, a bit more nicer, a bit more touchy or whatever, you know, using these emotional words. And this is how we can get to that thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that.
No, I'd definitely support what Emmy said, and even what she mentioned before is having a vision of what you're looking to do. And speaking from the venue side, letting us know what that physical impact is going to be. You know, if you have 3 or 4 different cameras, you know, for instance, if, you know, when I worked at City Winery, there were certain sight lines that you couldn't block. And if I know that this is what you're trying to look to do, then, you know, we need to kind of work around that and see what's possible, what's not possible. You know, kind of understand the vibe of the venue. You know, you don't want somebody on stage doing like a moving camera when it's a sit down venue. It's just not the right vibe. So it's just all about communication and making sure that whatever your vision is can match up with what you're looking to do. And if it doesn't, you need to figure out how we can kind of counterbalance that.
Yeah, in terms of photography, it's good to be precise, especially if you have like a clear vision. But if you don't, and you've signed up a photographer because you like their style, you're putting a lot of trust in that photographer, and don't expect them retrospectively to have pieces of work that they're not used to. So for instance, if I took photos and it was a bright show, and then all of a sudden after the show, they're like, oh, these are great, but do you have any where you did close-ups on my guitar? And it's like, you didn't ask for that. So I might, but there's be precise, and it will make everyone's lives easier. But yeah, you have to trust in that relationship between the vision that you've assigned a photographer or videographer on.
Sorry, I can add to this. Jane is so right. This is such a trust issue. And this is a bit like a dentist, or a scuba diving instructor. And this is a one thing, yeah? So this is your one gig, and you really would like to have it recorded or photographed properly. But that means you need to put the time in to find the right one, and you need to talk to them excessively. So it's never a wasted time to talk before what they would like. And it might gonna turn out that this is not your right person. So Jane is very right about this is a trust thing. But once you chose them, then let them work.
Love that was like a mic drop moment. Like I know I have this issue too. So you're like preaching not to the choir, but to the person who needs to hear it for sure. But it's like so great to hear from one side. Like if you see like really get to know the person's work that you're looking to work with so that you're not asking for something outside of their wheelhouse or for something that they don't enjoy doing. Like even if you have the ability to capture, X type of shot, like if that's not where your heart is or what you love capturing, you know, go for what you see and what you all enjoy. So I think that is a great point. Ashley, were you going to say something as well?
Yeah, I think same goes for audio, especially with mixing. It's just, a reference playlist. I think a lot of creatives are afraid to like impede on somebody else's artistry and they don't want to say, hey, I really like this. They kind of want you to have your artistic freedom. And I think there's that balance of giving somebody what inspires you and what they're looking for and not telling somebody exactly how to create. But I think it's always good to have a point of reference just to make sure everybody has the same expectations of what the end result will be. And also the timeline is also great to talk about too. It's like, when are you expecting this to be delivered? We, for audio, I know we have a lot of expectations set around how many times are we going to go back and forth and all of that. But I think it's great to provide inspiration. And anytime I work with a client and they have like a playlist of things that they love the sound of, it's like music to my ears. So it's good.
Love it. And do you all find that if someone gives you like a reference that it's hard for them to communicate what it is about this thing that they like? So like if someone gives you and me a video and they're like, I love this video, how do you help the artist really pinpoint what it is about these examples that they like so that you know kind of like what they're looking for in their work?
Well, I'm pretty sure that the others too have some special seventh sense, and this is a bit of like a magic. So you tune on the other person, and this is why these things are important, because then there's something we can talk about, and then I'm trying to get on their brain wavelengths, and somehow just like I don't know what's magic, yeah. So I cannot describe exactly how it works, but we talk and talk and talk. It can happen, very rarely it happens that the chemistry is just not working, and then you just mustn't take that job. So then it's just a clear no. And I did mistakes several times before. Then I didn't listen to these warning signs. I needed the money, or I don't know what happened. That was always a disaster, so never again. But if there is chemistry and then there's trust from both sides, then somehow subconsciously, consciously, somehow you will get to the thing. And what I like the most, when I know they're scared, and I appreciate the trust they put in me. But what I like the most, when they have some certain idea in their head what's going to be the outcome, what level the outcome is going to be. And especially if they put full trust in me, although they're a bit, uncertain, I enjoy it so much. Then when it happens to make it even better, even much better than they ever thought, sometimes it's even much better than I thought, I love that the most. And it only can happen if I get full trust.
I love that. You all feel the same on like that, trying to get on that same wavelength to understand kind of what it is about these examples. Because, songs are sometimes even the artist doesn't know how the how other songs are created, like how the sound became what it is, or if what kind of elements made this thing magical or beautiful. So do you guys feel the same about the wavelength? And
Yeah, I think elements is an important word because it should be something that inspires and not you're not plagiarizing. I think it's easier with photography with an artist to say, hey, can we remake this photo? Unless it's like a parody or you have that direction, but can we remake this photo but with me in it? I want the exact same colors, the exact same tone. That doesn't bode well for the photographer. You're not giving the photographer creative direction. But if you're saying, I like the elements of this here, I want to be inspired by this, and I want you to be inspired to do something in the similar way. That's a much better direction than can you recreate this like joint for joint, and shape for shape.
love that. That makes total sense. Awesome. So, is it helpful? So, what language would it be helpful for artists to know as it pertains to your areas of this and this topic? What kind of words would help them express or get the shots that they're looking to get? Are there like specific things that artists can kind of like look up to make sure that they're communicating clearly, um, with what the elements, like you said, Jane, of the production that they need from you all? We can start with Jane. Oh, Ashley. Oh, yeah, you came up. Yeah, that's cool.
I was gonna say I feel like when it comes to capturing sound at a venue, it's pretty easy for audio compared to other departments. I think really knowing the difference between stereo tracks and multi-track audio is like key for me. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. So you're making sure you're taking home the right product.
Awesome. Stereo, multi. Make sure you guys are taking notes. Jane,
I
are there
think
any?
for Yeah, I think for photography, if you're giving the photographer a lot of creative direction, you don't have to be so precise with the language. I think what Emmy said with the motion, is important because that's easier for me to understand rather than, I want you to get this close up when I'm singing this song specifically. As never That's never been asked of me, but that I know that that's precise. You could find a photographer or an artist who would benefit from that actually, but I think emotions is much better for me personally. And then maybe a checklist, especially if I'm working with partners, so not specifically artists. Partners are very prescriptive, so they'll have words like, close up of the band with the, item or the product, a view of the venue. So there's like that checklist that we can tick off. But at the same time, if you're taking photos for an artist, you want to tick all of those things, have the different angles, the different views, but also have some sort of emotion in there and make sure that these can be used later on and be engaged with your fans.
I love that.
Yeah. Emotion is the key word in here. So this is why artists are artists. They're delivering emotions. They're talking about emotions in several languages. It can be sculpture. It can be a poem. It can be a song. It can be a painting. So we all talk about emotions and feelings. So if it's the right professional you've managed to found, I think that's the best to talk about what emotion you would like to get in the end. I really don't like when they go into micromanaging. So then they're telling me that you stand exactly there and use that lens and make this, I want this shot in here. If it happens that I switch to RoboPilot, if I can't run away and I do exactly what they want, but that won't be good. So that won't be nice. It's going to be a quirky something. So my heart is not going to be in that for sure.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I love that.
I wanted to jump in with something for audio that came across my mind, and it's I think a lot of times if you're at a venue and you don't have your own front of house engineer, sometimes it's helpful for somebody that knows your show, maybe like a production person that you're working with or somebody to be with the front of house engineer, or maybe there's a note sheet that you can give so that if you have like specific emotional breakdowns in your song where maybe you need a different type of reverb, or like just giving them a heads up of what to expect in your show and what you're trying to convey. If there's something that you've learned that works really well, it's definitely okay to give that heads up to whoever's mixing front of house for the show.
Love that. Another tip that I didn't think about. This is incredible. I'm having so much fun. I hope you guys are having fun too. So Mike, how should the content be packaged or edited to make the biggest impact on talent buyers or on the venue?
Well, I think it needs to be something engaging. Like I mentioned, making sure that you're showing the crowd and how they're interacting with you so that the energy of the room is conveyed through the video, because you want the talent buyer to be excited about what you're putting out there. So it can be difficult to make sure that that's brought through a screen. And a hat tip to so far, every video that I've seen through them has always been engaging, always been interesting. A lot of the times, talent buyers, when new music comes through, if you're in a type of venue that can be open to that type of stuff, um, you're going through so many videos and artists in a day that you don't have that huge of an attention span. You're just looking for quick snippets that's going to catch your attention. And I can say that the majority of so far's videos, I'll stop and listen, watch the whole thing. Their editing is great. They show the crowd. You can kind of connect with what's going on screen, which is very difficult because it's just something that you're staring at a computer screen. You're looking at it all day. So it's being able to get that spark through the video and the audio that you're looking to, show that you can bring people in. Because we want to make sure that the room is full. And, if there's an opportunity to add you on as an opener or add you on or bring you in as a headliner, either way, you need to be able to show that you can bring it. And it's difficult to do through a video. So making sure that it's edited correctly, that you show your crowd, that you get that energy somehow captured on screen and through the audio is really important.
Awesome. And I've seen like videos where people have like the original show audio and then it transitions into like, you know, their studio recorded rendition of the song. How does that play a role in when a talent buyer is looking to book an artist?
I think I don't think I've come across it myself, but what I would imagine in that sense is it does kind of give a good balance of what their show is like versus what their recording is. And you can always tell, I'm sure all of us have gone to a concert and you love a song and you hear it and it's like you just play it on repeat and repeat and repeat, and then you see it on stage, and good or bad, it's something different, but it's a different vibe. So I can see how that would be beneficial to kind of give both sides of the coin. It's just a matter if you can do it in a way that's smooth, that isn't jarring, because again, you don't want anybody to take out of that moment that you're watching. If the video is good enough, it's like you're in the room.
I love that. Awesome. So, all right, we're almost ready to package this whole thing up. What is an ideal timeline for you all to turn around, let's say one recording of a song, like to get it kind of to, I guess, audio to video and then video to the artist? Like, what is the timeline for your part of this creative experience?
Shall I start?
Sure thing. That sounds good.
Well, if you would like to book a professional, you need to make sure that you book ahead, just to make sure that they are going to be available, because I can do one job at a time, so I can be on one place at one time. So as soon as you know when is the date, then you try to book the people to make sure that you will get the right people, you will get the people you want for that thing. And then once it's recorded, you can discuss, they can tell you what is the minimum time they're going to present the result to you. It's really depends on the complexity of the task. So I don't really want to say now anything, because that you really should talk to those people, and I don't want the other videographers go mad at me now because I said something unbelievable. But it should be like in weeks, yeah, after the show, definitely. And there's a lot of people working in a lot of kind of ways. How I work is that there's 2 rounds basically. So I present the first cut, basically the first edit. Then they have a chance to respond. Then I present the second one, and the third one is, so far it was always enough. If it's not enough, then there's something's wrong with the communication, or they want something else, or something, came across. So then we need to rediscuss the budget.
Yeah, that sounds great. Perfect. Straightforward. Anyone else? What's the timeline for you all?
I agree so much with Emmy. It's so deeply personal, the timeline. So it really is something that you just have to discuss before. Once you have the details of the project, you've locked it in. Let's talk about, okay, for audio, it's like how many tracks do you have? And depending on how that engineer's workflow is and what they have on their plate, it's different project to project, but it's important to ask that and to set like get a reasonable expectation of when you can expect the work back, and get it in writing sometimes too. That's really helpful.
Absolutely. Love that. Jane, same for you.
Yeah, for photography, it is going to be a shorter amount of time. I think when I started out, I kind of shot myself in the foot 6 years down the line, because my unique selling point was to get it done within 24 hours. And that was like I know, look at Emmy's face. And that was the way I differentiated myself from everyone else in the photo pit, because they got the same amount of time, they've got the same angles, probably better cameras, and I wanted to get it out to the artist before everyone else, even though it's probably not the best photo of the night. So 24 hours was my initial. I'm more relaxed right now, but if you do want your photographer to do it within 24 hours, you have to compensate them for that. This is them going straight home from the show. They've been standing for the whole show, taking photos, going home, not sleeping, and editing the photos, then turning it around for you within 24 hours so that you can post it on your social media. It would be great if that's part of your agreement before you even get that photographer on there. But a week is probably the best timeline for a photographer.
Awesome. Yeah. And that makes total sense. Like from everybody, it's like the advance notice plays as much a role as the post plays. So it's like, let me know as far in advance as possible so that, we can talk with the venue, get to see the space, figure out my own schedule and how it will all work. And then afterwards, it depends on what's on your plate, how complex everything is. So I'm there. I'm learning. No, I got you. This is wonderful. So Mike, when we have the content, the artist has the content, what is the best way for them to reach out to venues to get booked in their local market and maybe in a non-local market? How should they,
Well, I always like to say that if you can't sell out your own market, you shouldn't be focusing on outside of your market, because you need a hometown base to go out and support you and tell your fans or tell their friends that live in whatever market that you need to go check out this band. I the bands that I often gave the first shot to were ones that provided me with all the data up front. They say, these are the streams I'm getting in your market. This is where I played before. This is how many people I brought. All the data points that are important to when you've never met an artist before. That's what we get. We get that from agents. We get that from managers being like, we play this market. We did 300 people on a $25 ticket. Let's see what we can do. Or even if it's not in your market directly, is there a similar market? Like Boston and New York, I know that if they're going to do 600 people in New York, they're probably going to do 250 to 300 here, because just the population we have about half the population in New York. So out the gate, I would say most talent buyers, most of their job is 75% accounting and 25%, gut. So having that information out the gate will catch my eye a lot quicker than it is somebody saying like, hey, I should really play your venue. I sound really good. That might be true, but I might not have the time to sit there and listen to somebody I've never met before. And again, at the end of the day, our job is to make sure people are in the venue. So having something to rely back on, whether it's album sales or streams or, I've come through and supported this artist before, all that type of information is what makes my job just a little bit easier, which at the end of the day, for, people that are buying the rooms, you want to make their jobs as easy as possible. And be truthful. Don't ever inflate your numbers. If you could draw 15 people, be honest about it. And I will honestly write you back and say, that's great. It doesn't make sense for my room, but here's some other rooms in my market that you'll probably reach out to. We're always willing to help, but if you're going to lie to us, then it's just not fair for anybody.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And it doesn't help you in the long run either, like the artists
Nope.
themselves. So, yes, that give all you need in a short blurb.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
I
Yeah,
don't need a full
absolutely.
bio. I don't need you to tell me you sound like what was it? The vocal baby of Mariah Carey and Luther Vandross. I got one of those. I don't even know what that means, but I didn't want to imagine it. So we just got into the spam folder.
Right. You're like, I just need the numbers. The numbers and a link. If I have time, I'll listen to the link. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Love that. That's what this is all about. Getting the real deal, helping, you all just, sell yourself as best as possible and capture that content and get you out there. So what other ways have you all found that artists use this content? So not just sending it out to talent buyers, but what kind of creative and cool ways have you seen artists utilize content from live shows that that you loved to see or that was super engaging?
I can jump in. I think I'm just a really big fan of like really making as much content as you can from one moment. So the first thing when I'm with an artist and they have a show at a venue, how soon can we get access to the venue? uh, how early, night before, like what's going on, and how can we use that time? So sometimes it's filming an interview between two artists having a conversation, or filming an intimate stripped down set in the green room. And I also am a big fan of capturing sound check. So if you are going to release a performance video, you can like do a teaser with the sound check. Like there's just so many different pieces of content that you can capture in a venue. So if they're willing to let you in early, or even if you just have sound check moving forward, what are you doing in those gaps of time to create more content outside of just the performance? So I'm always a big fan of that.
Yes, I love that. Great ideas.
I want to echo Ashley's sound check. A little trick that I have with so far sound shows, as you know, if you go to a so far show, it's usually packed. So there's hardly any space for a photographer to be up in the artist's face taking photos. You have to be really careful of like where you stand before everyone takes their seat because you can't move. So I usually get most of my close-up shots at sound check, and you'd probably notice that if you see the artist has changed clothes in the album, but it's great to get more of the behind the scenes, different angles, different close-ups, different views from different times, and it doesn't actually have to be packaged as this was all from sound check. Sometimes people won't even know. And it saves you blocking the videographer who's trying to film a show. It saves you from like disrupting the audio engineer if you're standing in their way, or like in front of the artist as well. You're moving about whilst they're performing. So yeah, try and get some nice close-ups when the artist is more relaxed as well in sound check. But I've seen a lot of artists use shoot my photos for Instagram stories, for Snapchats, just to give their fans a bit more of an insight of what's going on before the actual performance happens. And I know fans love to see behind the scenes, to see behind the curtains. And then I've seen some of them use it on flyers and things like that, but just do be careful if you are going to use a photo that you've assigned a photographer to take photos of you for social media. Make sure it is for social media, because there's going to be you need to have another agreement for that. You need to make sure that the photographer is okay that you're going to print out that photo again or use that content for something else, because that's breaching some sort of agreement, and you would need to compensate that person again for your new use.
Love that. Yes, getting into the fine print for sure. Amy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, in the end of the day, it's always about the story. We are looking for a story, even if isn't a story. So if it's like recording a concert, we are still looking for a story. So it's nice to record the whole thing from way before, when the people arriving, when they're rehearsing, when the audience is arriving, and so on, you know. So then there's a little bit of a story where there isn't a story, but there is a story, you know. So somehow it always needs to be in the end a story, you know, somehow.
Yes, I love that. So all the artists out there, make sure that you're camera ready from the time you step out of your car, van, tour bus, whatever.
Well, we need to arrive very, very early. Yeah. So I mean, when we do something like this, I tell them that, look, I want to arrive when you guys arrive, or even before that a little bit, so we can set up the camera and even record when you park with the car and you walk in. And then I record that you actually step in. I mean, you push the handle down and you push the door in and you go in and you say hello to the whoever, you know, and then you setting up the equipment and setting everything up and rehearsing and setting the lights and people arrive and so on, you know, because there's a bit of a story so people can see a little bit behind. And there's tons of videos like this, yeah, where you can see a little bit more than the concert. And
Love
then
that.
in the end, well, what's happening after the concert, you don't always want to record it. So it really depends on obviously the band and what's going to happen afterwards. But everything which is okay, you know, that can be a little bit in there as well.
Awesome. I love that. Tell the story, help people to buy in, become engaged with the content for sure.
Because
So
it's
we're
giving
gonna
Oh,
much
jump.
more,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, because it's giving much more, sorry for that. So it's of the personality of the band, of the people. With this, you can see a bit more of that. So it's a bit more blessed, a bit more touchable, what kind of people they are. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, no, Mike, were you gonna say something? I think.
yeah, I was going to touch something on what Jane and Ashley mentioned is that you need to make sure that you are communicating with the venue about the purpose of these. As Jane mentioned, depending on, when I worked for a music hall in town, there was a fee for recording or visual. We usually waived it if it was just for, promotional purposes. But if, for instance, you're going to record a live audio recording of, your show at that date, and then go around and turn it around and sell it, the venue will often make a note of that and ask for compensation. So just make sure you're communicating ahead of time that everybody is aware of what the purpose of this is and that there is no confusion, because if, they're going to sell a DVD of the performance at the venue and the venue wasn't compensated, that might be an issue especially for much larger venues.
That's great to know. Absolutely. And it just, it kind of goes back to clear communication, getting everything up front and knowing, having clarity around what it is that you're going to do with this content and how you want to capture it because, everybody has, an agreement. There has to be an agreement between each party and really understanding and making sure that each person is compensated and credited properly for their work. So that kind of brings me to the last question that I'm going to ask before we jump into the Q&A. How important is it that you're credited for your work, and how can an artist best credit you for capturing their live show?
I can jump in here. Oh, yeah, so I think usually when you're doing your agreements, when you're discussing with each other, this should always come up. You want to support each other. So I want to be credited because I want to see my work out in the wilds. I'll support you by retweeting, reposting, and liking and supporting each other on social media. I also like to see when like news outlets use the photo and they've credited me. I'm just proud to see that, my work has been used in these news outlets, but they are in support of whoever the artist is that I'm taking photos of. In terms of credit, I will, if I have a presence on that type of social media platform, I'll give them all the different versions of my social media handles. And then otherwise it's just my name. It's just please credit my name where possible. If you're sharing it with a blog, with an interview, just make sure that, you know, my name is there. And that's just to help me out as a photographer. So if other artists like that sort of style, they can see it.
Awesome. Love that. Emmy, I saw you and Jane came off me at the same time.
I'm sorry, Jane. But pretty much I can say the same what Jane said. My name is quite unique, even in Hungary. So it's only me basically called with this name. So I just asked them to credit my name, and I'm very happily sharing on all my social media platforms the things I've done, and I'm very happy if they pass it on. As I mentioned earlier, that this is pretty much like a dentist, so it's such a trust thing what we do. So when someone sees something what they like and they ask that artist who did this to you, then they recommend me, and most of the jobs I get like this.
Love that. So make sure you let the people know, Ashley.
Yeah, I mean, same. Don't make any assumptions. Just ask the creative that you're working with how they want to be credited and best supported. But I also think really include them in your strategy. I think a lot of like music and content comes out, and then there's like teasers and such, and pointing everybody to a link. Send that to your videographer and your sound engineer so that they also can post the teaser and say, hey, this thing I created is coming out. I think as creatives, we often see something that we worked really hard like get released and we find out like a week later, just like seeing it. And so including folks on when something's coming out is always
Awesome. And Mike, from your standpoint, if an artist like, you know, is about to play a show at a venue or has played a show and is posting, you know, content from that show, does the venue like love seeing them tagged, and will they, you know, repost? Does it matter? You know, do they have any guidelines on what they repost and what they don't?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the video, but for the most part, yeah, like there's a Japan Droids video that they filmed the like some B-roll outside of the venue, and it was some girl that the story is that she was off, like she had a bad reaction to her medicine, but the way that it looked is that she was passed out on the street. That's not something that we really wanted, especially when we were about to go to get an increase in capacity. But you know, it's really nice when somebody says, "Hey, you know, we shot it here," or if you know, everyone was talking about doing B-roll ahead of time. That's good promotional material because most ticket sales are sold within the first 2 or 3 weeks of when a show announces, and then about 3 or 4 weeks leading up to the show. So anything that is going to get social, you know, interactions is beneficial because in turn that, you know, might bring attention to somebody that didn't know that artist was in town. Which is always the struggle for every venue, is making sure that their shows are somehow cutting through the noise. And the way that usually happens is through the artist's voice.
Love that. Awesome. So artists, tag everybody who played a role. Make sure you find out how people would best like to be credited and tagged, and make sure you honor those relationships and those connections, because people talk, and, you know, future opportunities or lack thereof, you know, can definitely be a result of that. That interaction. So we are moving right on to the Q&A. We have a question that says, about that last info set, should we share our numbers from pre-COVID show number sales versus our online live streaming a live show for over 100 shows? So that's a question, yep, for you, Mike.
Well, what I would say is, I guess it really depends on your demographic. I will say, like, my experience, and I was just at a meeting last night with a bunch of different agents and managers in town, and I asked them, you know, how are your sales doing compared to pre-COVID? And you know, it's been a pretty sharp drop off, and I say that it was like 20-30% less than what they were doing beforehand, and it varies market to market, of course, and there's always some outliers, but between that and the no shows, it's tough to say how accurate everything is now. There was plenty of shows that I booked coming out of COVID, once things could open back up, that I had sold 3 or 4 times before, that sold 100 tickets, and that's in a 300 cap room. So when I make a guarantee for what they did pre-COVID, I got burned because post-COVID numbers weren't real. Of course, none of us knew that was going to happen. We all hoped that everyone would be excited to come out and see these shows, but people weren't ready. And it's tough to say when that will be back to normal times. Now, younger demographics, people that are, 30, 35 and younger, they're not as scared to go out to shows. The standing room only shows are still packed. Tickets are still selling. Um, if you have an older demographic, you just got to imagine, is your audience going to be okay going to a crowded room? Are they ready for that? Eventually that won't be a question anymore, but for the next couple of years, it's something you're really going to have to consider.
Absolutely. So do you recommend that they kind of do both, like
Yeah,
if they
I
have
think
that kind of comparison?
I think it's important to say these were my pre-COVID numbers. This is what I've been doing since. These are my live stream numbers. If there's a way that they can get their live stream numbers and drill down and say, in your market, this is what I did, because obviously live streams, anybody can come in, as we see from the chat. We have people from all over the world. It's important to give that information, and then it's up to the talent buyer to how to digest that information. Like I said, I know how my market sells. I know, like, there were blues and jazz artists that would sell 300 or 400 tickets outside of in the suburbs of Boston, but when they come into town, I know that I have to shave off 20 to 30% because those people aren't going to come into town. So it's the same thing as, well, I know now that, based upon all the shows that I have and the history and the data that I have post-COVID, based upon the numbers that I know pre-COVID, I can make an adjustment and say, all right, well, you're saying you can do 200 people. Let's guess 100, 120 on a good night, and we'll make the adjustment and the deal based upon that.
Awesome. So don't make your own adjustments, artists, because the
No,
venue's making the adjustments. So
as
do
long
your
as you're
real
accurate
numbers
about
and
your,
then, yeah.
just be truthful about your numbers. That's all the best advice I can give you.
Totally. Love that. Absolutely. And you bring up a good point about virtual shows. So this will be kind of like the last question we're able to get to. But for you all capturing virtual shows, content at shows where there's maybe a smaller live audience or more intimate space, what are some tips on how artists or how you other creatives can capture that magic in that space without like this huge venue and tons of audience members?
Is it for me? I think I just did a video clip, which I gave into the bio, which I mentioned that this video clip is not yet out, but through that link you can watch it, and that's a typical thing what you just said. So that was a very limited amount of people. We wanted to have some sort of like a garage band concert kind of feeling, and the band invited their friends and they came one by one, and then that became the story, that the people are coming one by one, and in the end you feel like there's a crowd, but in fact there was like 10 people, and everybody was worried. And I said, trust me, it's going to be all right. It's going to be a crowd, believe me. I mean, then the videographer comes to make a crowd out of 10 people. It's doable.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazing. So leaning into that and just, yeah, creating that magic, that eye. That's the whole reason why you do what you do, and we don't.
I
Jane
have a
Ash
look
is
at
a
it, you
super.
know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll definitely send all the links for everyone to connect with each other for sure. Um, so I'm super excited. Thank you all so much, Emmy, Jane, Ashley, Mike, for your incredible insight and tips that you're sharing with the artists about how they can, get their music out there and book some shows. It has been my absolute pleasure. You guys were amazing. Um, Thank you to all of the attendees for jumping in, for dropping your questions and letting us know where you're tuning in from in the chat. We hope that you got as much information out of it as I think you all did. And we hope to see you at our very next in session. Please stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram, all those things so that you know when the next in session is and all the amazing webinars that we have. Check us out on YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Thank you guys.